Kyle, so lots of talk about third-party cookie deprecation, the IDFA restrictions coming out of Apple. Who does this impact, and how does it impact marketers and consumers, and sort of, set the bigger picture here for us, please.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a broad topic area, and really the impact is across really both the MarTech and ad tech ecosystem, more significantly on the ad tech side, since third-party cookies have been really the primary currency for exchanging data through the open internet. When you start talking about IDFA, obviously that's Apple centric. And so you're talking about, Apple mobile devices and being able to, recognize consumers on that platform, though it's, certainly a precursor to things happening, potentially on the Google side and on Android devices. So really both of these areas and the, either deprecation or restriction of those technologies are really pervasive. And I think that's really what's caused such a kind of furor across the industry with companies, looking to both on the provider side of trying to pivot their capabilities, their platforms, and then certainly on the advertiser side of looking forward to say, how are we going to solve for this? How are we going to continue to be able to reach consumers and measure and find attribution against those efforts without these technologies in place?
So, which leads me to first-party data, which is increasingly important, and the identity graph that you guys have been sort of pioneers for a number of years. Tell us about the role of first-party data, the changing nature of the identity graph, some work you're doing, and how this will play out in the new year.
Sure. First party data has always been critical, especially in, the more traditional channels of direct mail or email. And there's a period where in the digital ecosystem, because of the mechanisms at play and the ability for both walled gardens to kind of manage capabilities, and then the complexities there where a lot of providers were just kind of managing on behalf of advertisers. There was a separation from really focusing on that first party data. Well, now with these new events coming to play within the market, the need to really master your own data, understand your consumers, not just your customers, but even your prospects, and have data that is in a brand's control and being able to leverage that effectively certainly risen to the top. It is paramount that advertisers master that information. And in doing so, it's tied directly to privacy and consent, the need to be able to capture those. Advertisers have the most intimate relationship with their customers. And so, rather than leaving something to a third party to either help manage or to aggregate and compile information, doing so within the first party context now is paramount to being able to be successful in the future. You do have some platforms, especially the walled gardens, who in their own right kind of have their own first party data because they have this closed ecosystem where they have the consumer identity resolved deterministically through logins and authentication. They have really shown that owning that, managing that is a true differentiator and creates a competitive advantage. And so now it's kind of incumbent on the rest of the open internet, the players there, whether it's a platform or even the advertisers themselves, to understand how can they best utilize their first party data.
So how does this all change for consumers? Clearly there's privacy considerations that are growing, and that's part of the changes. But what about consumers getting relevant information getting targeted information or not, or getting contextual information? How does sort of the consumer experience change through all this?
It's really about the value exchange. Previously consumers were kind of left out of the value exchange. Their information was being shared, directly between advertisers and platforms. And now there's this injection of the consumer into the middle of that through these privacy regulations and a lot of the mechanisms like third-party cookies going away. It now is incumbent on the brands to really define and help articulate to the consumer what that value exchange is. In other words, for you as a consumer, what are you going to get in return for sharing some of your personal information? Now, in many cases, that is still about getting contextualized or personalized, offers or information. I think everyone still has that desire to be known and appreciates being known and having a, more of a one-to-one relationship, but it actually puts more, power in the consumer's hands to really evaluate that value exchange and say, is this worth it to me? And if so, then I'm going to share this information, but it's in a more managed context and not the sense that, I've provided something and now it's out in the wild and I don't really have control of that. So it really puts the consumer closer in control and really being able to evaluate those value exchanges.
And finally, Kyle, just some thoughts about clients being ready for all of this. Lots going to change in the new year. You guys, through your existing clients, through the IPG family, you have a lot of exposure to many, many clients across many verticals. Are advertisers ready? Is it an education process? The technology certainly exists, but to sort of, move to, this new world of identity where third-party cookies are not part of it. Where do we stand in terms of the transition, and maybe what are some friction points?
Yeah, I think everyone has taken kind of this last quarter or several last quarters, especially during kind of the slowdown with COVID, to really educate themselves. That's what we've seen with our clients. It's a lot of conversations, a lot of even foundational discussions around technologies, around impacts, really evaluating their business. Do we have a value exchange we can offer to consumers? What does it take? Are there other means to, acquire information and leverage that? So to this point, I think there's been a lot of thinking going on. And, I think there's also a lot of anticipation that as 2021 rolls around, that action is going to be needed. Now, there's debate out there of still, is Google going to kick the can down the road a little bit, or are they going to hold to their timelines around, March around deprecation or not? We saw with IDFA, Apple, initially putting kind of a marker out there and then pushing that out, indeterminately into the future. But I think everyone has this anticipation that it's time to act. At the same time, there's a general acknowledgement that it hasn't been solved for yet fully. I think, through this series, you've heard others, speaking to the fact that there isn't one answer. There's multiple answers, and that depends on really your use cases, how you're engaging your consumers, who your partners are, what your strategy is. So all of that's going to come into play. And in 2021, you're going to see, people taking a lot more active role now that they've kind of educated, really evaluated the market and understand, what options they have.